Okay, so before we get to the A level, let's just summarize what we've done. We started with a single glucose molecule. We broke it down into two G3Ps, and from those two G3Ps, we extracted a bunch of energy and it ended up with two pyruvates. So let's think about this for a second. The whole goal is to make ATP because we have 2 billion, blah, blah, blah. In order to figure out how much ATP we're making, we have to do an analysis of everything we've done. What ATP have we made? What ATP have we used? Now, if we look at the destabilization reactions, we've used up 2 ATP to get those started, to add the activation energy. So that becomes a loss of ATP. So in our budget, we have to have a -2 ATP here. But if we look at the oxidation, remember, each one of those G3Ps produces 2 ATP, and then another molecule, that NADH. That NADH is the thing that got reduced at the very beginning of that whole process. We need to keep track of that because that's got energy on it as well. So if we look at the oxidation, there were 2 ATP per G3P, but there's 2 G3P per glucose. So the total amount of ATP that we've made so far is 4, and we've made 2 NADH. And I apologize for putting myself in the middle. It's the only place I would fit. At the overall then, we're looking at the total net yield. Then we have to subtract away these 2 ATP, and the net yield then gives us 2 NADH and 2 ATP for these reactions. Okay, now for the A level. Here it is. At the A level, you've got to know basically everything that I've taught before in addition to the structures. And not only that, but you need to know the enzymes that are catalyzing each one of these reactions. Every single reaction that we saw in the previous B level is catalyzed by a different enzyme. Now, you might look at this and say, oh my gosh, that's a lot. Well, it is, but the point is that if you look at this in this particular way and learn how to handle these kinds of complex problems, assimilating information, being able to synthesize that with the other things that you know and the other things you can do and the other manipulations you can make in your mind, makes your life so much more easy. And the point is you look for patterns. Always look for patterns. So we start with this. Here's the glucose. And we're going to take that glucose, and remember that first step is to make glucose 6-phosphate by adding a phosphate on carbon number 6. Okay, look at the pattern here. You already know how to draw this glucose, right? So here's the hexagon, and remember each one of these vertices is a carbon atom. And the question then is, one of these carbons is different than the others. Notice this is the weird one. It's outside the ring. Now, the way we number these carbons is not arbitrary. We start with the oxygen in the ring and we go to this side, not the side with the carbon hanging out, but the other side. And that becomes carbon number 1. Now, for those of you who have had organic chemistry, we're starting with what would be called the aldehyde carbon. This is the carbon that, if in the straight chain form, has the aldehyde group on it. But that's carbon number 1 right there, and then we just numbered them around the ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. Okay, so notice 6 is outside the ring. That's what makes it available. It's much more energetically feasible to put a phosphate group onto this carbon than it is to put it on any of the carbons in the ring. So that's why the phosphate ends up on carbon number 6. And so you end up with glucose 6-phosphate. So everything here is what we've seen before. Glucose 6-phosphate, and the ATP is giving that phosphate. That's the gamma phosphate. This enzyme here, hexokinase, is one that we've seen before as well. That's what catalyzes this reaction, and it phosphorylates this. That's what makes it a kinase. That's kinase is a type of enzyme that phosphorylates or dephosphorylates. It adds a phosphate group or it takes the phosphate group away. So this step right here is adding that activation energy that we talked about before, but the problem is now it's not enough. We need more energy. We need another ATP. To put that other ATP on, though, we have to the phosphate's got to be added to one of these other carbons, and like I said before, those carbons are all in the ring, and so they're not very available. So what happens is this enzyme, phosphohexosisomerase, takes this and isomerizes it to fructose. Now notice the difference now. What's happened here, if you look at this and you look at this, ask yourself what's the difference. Try to see the difference between these two molecules before I tell you. And then I'll tell you how a professional looks at this, because that may be how you're seeing it. If you're seeing it that way, that's fantastic. All right? So think about that for a moment. How is this molecule different than this molecule? Okay, now here's what the professional sees. This oxygen is connected to this carbon. That bond breaks, and it reforms here. And that's it. That's all that happened. Now, the rest of the stuff, yeah, some other things moved around, but that was just closed valences. But see this? If you look here, this oxygen is attached now to which carbon? Well, this has got to be carbon number 1 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How do I know? Well, we know this is carbon 6. Count backwards. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's got to be carbon 1. So therefore, this is the bond that broke between the oxygen and carbon 1. And now this oxygen is attached to carbon number 2. It's physically bonded to carbon number 2. So that's all that happened. Now, things did move around. There was no H group that moved and so forth, but not much. It just basically was closing valences. That was it. So what that does, though, is it takes this carbon number 1 and puts it outside the ring, and now it's available for phosphorylation. So another kinase, this time phosphofructokinase. That's another way to help remember these enzymes. Their names tell you what they do. The isomerase isomerizes. The kinases put a phosphate group on. It's going to come along in here, grab another phosphate off of ATP, and put it onto the carbon that it made available by isomerizing, and that then gives us fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. Okay, so that's adding the activation energy. And like we said before, once the activation energy is added, I can now break these bonds, 1, 2, 3. I can break the bonds right here and split this molecule into 2. Remember what I said in the B level was that when I do that, I'm going to knock the molecule into 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. I'm sorry, I lied a little bit. It isn't 2 molecules glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. I glossed over a complexity which I need to add here. When you break this molecule into 2, it does not fall apart into 2 glyceraldehyde 3-phosphates. It gives you 1 glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and another one that's an isomer of it called dihydroxyacetone phosphate, or DHAP. And the reason is this: if you look at this molecule, it's not quite symmetrical. Just draw a plane right here and look at this side of the molecule, compare it to this side of the molecule, and you'll see a difference. You'll see right there. Now this OH and this OH are different, but that's not the important part. The important part is this. See, there's no OH here, but there is here. So when I break this molecule into 2, I don't get 2 identical molecules. It's not perfectly symmetrical. What I get is this. There's the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. It's called that because there's the aldehyde group. Again, for those of you who've had organic chemistry, you'll recognize that as an aldehyde. If you haven't had organic chemistry, don't worry about it. But this 3-carbon compound is the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, the G3P that I showed at the B level. But the other side breaks into this, dihydroxyacetone phosphate, or DHAP, DHAP. So notice these 2 things are different, but they're quite similar. Again, ask yourself, look at this molecule carefully, and look at this molecule carefully, and ask yourself, how do you see the difference? Here's how, again, a professional sees the difference. Look at the top carbon here. There's no difference. See H2O phosphate. The middle carbon is different, and this carbon is different. The aldehyde carbon is different. But notice the only difference is this. You see the double bond here with this carbon? It just is in the middle now. Here it's on the end. That's it. Everything else is just moving hydrogens and oxygens around to close valences. So I take this double bond oxygen and put it down here, move the OH and the H up here to close the valences, and that's the only difference between those 2 molecules. So they're isomers of each other. Count up the number of carbons, count the hydrogens, count the oxygens. You'll see they're exactly the same. So what happens is this. I get DHAP and G3P. The G3P then is so similar to the DHAP in its energy state that it'll bop back and forth between the 2, and there's an enzyme that catalyzes that reaction. But this reaction is very, very easily reversible. So the G3P is going to get used through the rest of glycolysis. Eventually, the DHAP is going to get converted to G3P, and then it will go down through the rest of it. So what I said at the B level was only slightly misleading. It wasn't entirely wrong. You're going to get eventually 2 G3Ps. Both of them are going to go through this pathway. But I just skipped over this DHAP step. All right, but let's go back now to the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Watch what happens. I go from here to here, from glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, G3P, to 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, or BPG. Now, again, look at the molecules and ask yourself what's different. They're very simple. Look right here. That's the only thing you need to look at. That hydrogen right here on the aldehyde group of the G3P is replaced by oxygen and a phosphate. Okay, so is this oxidation or reduction? Loss of hydrogen. The hydrogen is gone. That is reduction. Where did the hydrogen go? I'm sorry, that's oxidation. Where did the hydrogen go? It ended up on the NAD, and that's reduction. So there's your oxidation step. That, remember, oxidation is loss of energy, so this is a big exergonic reaction. And the reduction step is here, and that's gain of energy. So energy is lost from glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and gained by the NAD. Okay? Now, what happens then in the 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate? It's just that the phosphate is removed. Okay, so we remove the phosphate, again, a kinase right there because it's going to remove a phosphate. Kinases either add or remove phosphates. The phosphate's removed, put onto ATP, and now we have 3-phosphoglycerate. And notice, it's exactly the same as glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, except that that hydrogen is replaced by an oxygen. You should recognize that as oxidation. This hydrogen has been removed, oxygen has been gained, that's oxidation. What got reduced? This and this. So these are big oxidation steps, and they're big energy releasing steps. Okay, now let's go back to this. I want to look at the G3P going down to BPG. When that happens, the NAD becomes NADH. All right, let's look at this. I want to look at this reaction in more detail. All right, so here it is. In this case, here is the NAD. NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. It's called that for a reason that you can figure out. Look here. You recognize this. You should recognize this molecule. We've been seeing it all semester. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a ribose. Notice it's a ribose, not deoxyribose, because there's the carbon that has the oxygen on it. So this is a ribose sugar, a phosphate, and then a nitrogenous base. So that you can recognize as a nucleotide. Here's another one. Sugar, phosphate, nitrogenous base. They're connected together through the phosphate groups, and this then becomes a dinucleotide, 2 nucleotides. This one is one you've seen before. This is adenine, so this is adenosine. So NAD, though, is called nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And the reason is this nitrogenous base is one you've not seen before. This is a different nitrogenous base makes a different nucleotide called nicotinamide. So that's why this is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. This is where the reaction occurs on the nicotinamide. Now notice here you've got this weird ring with this resonant structure of the electrons. You'll learn about that when you get your organic chemistry if you haven't yet. And what happens during the reduction step, during this step, NAD to NADH, is that this N with a plus on it goes to this. There's no plus, and we add a hydrogen. Okay, so we need 2 hydrogens for this. One hydrogen ends up here. There's a reduction that occurs there. But then a second electron is ripped off of the second hydrogen and used to kill that plus charge. And then we release a free proton. So look what happened. We need 2 hydrogens here. One gets added, the electron from the other gets added, and now this is carrying 2 electrons. So we call NAD an electron carrier and becomes NADH because it has the extra H. So there's reduction. Oxidation, of course, would be going the opposite direction. So here we're gaining energy going to the right. To the left, we would be losing it. But in this step, we're gaining it. We go from NAD to NADH. Okay, so this is important. This is critical. NADH is a critical thing that we need to follow because it's got a bunch of energy in it. It's got more energy than ATP, in fact. And we'll see later exactly how much energy and how it is used in metabolism very shortly. Okay, but now we've got these steps. We're down here with this 3-phosphoglycerate. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take this 3-phosphoglycerate and we're going to get this phosphate group off. Problem is, like I said, at the B level, this phosphate is sort of tightly bound onto the molecule. The reason it's tightly bound is because of where it is. It's far away from all these other things that are much more reactive. Like, for example, this, you'll notice that's a carboxyl group, by the way. This carboxyl group is reactive, and the thing that is interesting about this is whenever you see a molecule with a double bond, the electrons, in some sense, the electron density around that whole molecule is being absorbed sort of more by that double bond. And that means that the other bonds around the double bond are looser. And so this is far away from that double bond. If I can get it closer to the double bond, it'll loosen up. It'll be easier to remove. And that's exactly what this next step does. It takes the 3-phosphoglycerate and it's going to take this phosphate and move it simply to the middle carbon. Okay, watch that. The phosphate at the end is going to be moved to the middle. Okay, and there it is. Now it's in the middle. And what that's done is it's moved this closer to this double bond. And again, the double bond is absorbing electron density, loosening these bonds. It isn't sufficiently loosened, however, to remove and still be able to gain the energy on the ATP. So what I have to do is I have to make another double bond. I'm going to make a double bond right here. Now look at this molecule compared to this molecule and tell me what happened. What happened? This hydrogen is gone, and one of these hydrogens, this OH, is gone. So the OH is gone, the hydrogen is gone, that makes water, and that opens up a valence on this carbon and this carbon, and the valence closes to make a double bond. And that gives me PEP, phosphoenol pyruvate. Once I've got that double bond formed, the electron density is pulled this way and pulled this way, That loosens this bond so that when I remove it, this phosphate stays at a high energy state. So this last step, again catalyzed by a kinase, pyruvate kinase, will take that phosphate group off, put it onto ATP to make ATP, and now we have the conjugate base of the organic acid, pyruvic acid. You see why it's an acid. This right here is a carboxyl group. And you see why it's the conjugate base. When it's in solution, the hydrogen's already been released, and so the base is right here. So that's pyruvate. That's the end product of glycolysis, and that's the end of it. That's the whole process. So that's the A level. Again, structures, explanation. In both the A level and B level, the difference between A level and B level is the depth of explanation and knowing the structures and the enzymes. Okay, so if we look at the total free energy change that occurs, this is glycolysis in summary. We start with glucose with a certain amount of energy. We're going to basically look at this as relative free energy change. So we're going to see the glucose as zero energy. We add ATP, and so the energy level goes up because the delta G is positive here and here. And so we get up to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, and we've gone up by quite a bit. But notice the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate that moves down to the BPG, there's a big release of free energy. And notice it's at the big release that we made a NADH. So this is where we're gaining a ton of energy. And then the next step to BPG to 3PG, we also release a bunch of energy, make ATP. Here we're isomerizing things, moving things around a little bit. So we take the 3PG, make it 2PG, make PEP, and then the final step is also big and exergonic, and we can make 2 ATP from that. So the total amount of change is this. We start with glucose, and we end up then with 2 G3Ps. The delta G for that is positive 15 kilocalories per mole. But then we're going to take those G3Ps, oxidize them into 2 pyruvates, and that reaction has a delta G that's minus 155 kilocalories per mole. Remember what we saw before. Biochemistry is seen by physics as simply the sum of all the delta Gs. And so the delta G of glucose to pyruvate is going to be minus 140 kilocalories per mole because that's minus 155 plus 15. Therefore, this is an exergonic reaction. It's spontaneous, happens on its own, and we can use it to make net 2 ATP, but even more importantly, we make 2 NADH. We'll see why that's more important here very shortly.